So what are your latest numbers, Tim, for the launch?
I have no idea. I don't.
Well, I do. I looked a little earlier, and in the Kindle version of the book, it has climbed to #1 bestseller in a couple different categories, and it's showing like it could be a #1 bestseller overall in success and self-development. The paperback book was just released today for official sale, and it is climbing the charts. As I remember, in personal development, it was like 433. Which is remarkably high when you consider there's 4 million books on Amazon. So rather than us being listed at 4 million, we're listed at 433 and rising. Today's only really the first day of the launch. And my experience has been that people are slow to respond. And over the next 7 days or more, the book can climb and stay at a very high rank. So in many ways, this is just the beginning. And I'm very excited. I keep looking at my copy, which was a pre-publication copy. It still has that stripe across the middle, which means it's a collectible. If anybody would like to bid on this, I might put it on eBay later. And I'll sign it. I'll get Tim to sign it. Or I'll just forge his name. I don't know.
You can just forge it. That's great. Well, that's awesome news. That's awesome news. I've been hard at work getting all the resources together, and then there are some bonus videos from some of our earlier interviews, Joe, that I was going to share with everybody because they're just so awesome. And but they are on my other computer. So, and the new MacBook Pros don't have USB ports in them. So surprise.
Yeah, I have a ton of those little adapters.
Yeah. So I got an adapter, but it's the wrong one. So
you know, Tim, our book is called One Belief Away. And I have a basic belief. It's an operating belief in my life that helps me get things done when it looks like it's virtually impossible. Much like you buy a new computer and, they decide not to give you the ports that the old computers need, which means that you can't really communicate with them.
Yeah.
But my operating belief is there is always a way.
Yeah.
There is always a way. I may not know it. A lot of people I ask may not know it. I might actually have to invent the way out of my own need and improvising and adapting to do it. But there is always a way. Every time I fall back to that, no matter what the challenge is, I end up finding or creating a solution. Yeah. So whatever the case is with you, there with so many freaking nerds on the planet, there's probably a 12-year-old who can fix it for you, and you and I will be scratching and pulling the rest of our hair out. But
I can't.
A 12-year-old will go, nothing to it.
This is so true. This is. So, I reached out to my 13-year-old. I said, help. And he got me to order this hub that'll be coming from Amazon. So we'll probably have it tomorrow and it will all be good. So if you do go to the bonus resource page and it says coming soon, rest assured, it'll be up in the next day or two. Yes, I will get it done. So, so good. So I'm curious, what might have drawn some of you to pick up a copy of that book, because it really it targets two really important categories. And the first one is, for me, helping people with anxiety, worry, stress. People have been through traumas, people that have been their heart's been broken into a million pieces, and this will show you how to put your heart back together and feel whole again. So that's the first part of it, which really was the reason why, I wanted to be a part of this with Joe, because we want people to feel loved and to feel like they are enough, and that we don't want anybody walking around needlessly suffering emotionally. And the biggest fear that most people seem to have is that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve love. And that, or because I have a hard time following through or staying focused or motivated or knowing what I want to do or getting myself to do it, that there's something wrong inside of me or I'm broken, which is false. It's just some beliefs that are in the way. And sometimes a not understanding how your mind works, because who the heck teaches it? We don't learn it in school or in church, or usually not from our parents either. So that's the first part. And then the second part is on how do you make more money, and how do you achieve these goals, and how do you become more prosperous, and how do you get over the scarcity mindset that most all of us have. And for that, I enlisted Joe as well, because there was some stuff that I still hadn't figured out. And the more conversations that Joe and I had, the more I knew that he was the only one that would be able to help me finish this kind of book, because I wanted to write it where it seems so simple and it makes so much sense, but it's very high level stuff. It's, you know, it's on the, what did they say? If you can get from the far side of complexity and turn it into simplicity, then, you know, you are on the edge of genius. So if you can make something that's really complex seem so simple and obvious, then you really have a deep understanding of it. And that's what this book is. So I'm just curious, you know, what might have drawn you to grab a copy of it? Anybody?
I think it was the beautiful cover.
That your daughter designed?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact.
Big shout out to Debbie O'Byrne. She's incredible.
Yep.
Jetlaunch.net. So yeah, Chris and his amazing team help us put this book together, and the cover, the layout, helping to promote it. Chris has been an incredible supporter the whole way through. And so if you do happen to be an author or want to write books, then let me know and I'll connect you to Chris.
Thank you for all you
It was worth every penny you paid. Oh, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do have I'm sorry.
I just wanted to compliment the cover. The cover is remarkable. And there's a rule of thumb in publishing that says you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can sell a book by its cover. And so my marketing perspective has always been, when I look at the cover, is it going to stop somebody? Especially in the old days when we would go to bookstores and there would be thousands of other books that are literally the competitor for this book. And so you have to have a cover that jumps off the shelf. And that's really the second thing. The first thing is to have a title that'll stop them. And then once they're stopped with the title, you want the cover to actually complete that. Then you flip it over, of course, and the back cover should close the deal, more or less. So, Chris, I didn't know it was your daughter, but thank her for doing that, because it is an A+ job. Well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm hugely proud of her. So I do have a question for you, since I've got you on the line. Now, first of all, I've been a fan of yours for like way, way, way long, like before The Secret, long time ago. And so this is a huge honor for me just to be on this call. But I have, in addition to 4 children in their 30s, I have a 4-year-old. And I am, what sorts of things can I do at this point in her life to prepare her for, all these things that, we've learned the hard way, like belief. And really everything that's in the book, those are all the things that I want to bring her up. But sometimes it's like, okay, at 4 years old, I have trouble figuring out where to start.
Yeah, that's a remarkably good question. And I get variations of it from time to time. I think Tim and I have talked about this in one of the interviews he did with me. As much as I've studied marketing, persuasion, NLP, psychology, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, a long list of the influencers and the influence literature that's out there, I really got to admit the tried and true way to change anybody, to influence anybody, is by example. They are watching you, especially if it's your offspring. If this is, I think you said daughter, if this is your daughter, she is paying attention to you and what you do. It's the old thing about some people will tell you what to do, but they're doing the opposite. And what people watch is what you're actually doing with your behavior. So my rule of thumb is you have to lead by example. The second stage of that is I'm not adverse to leaving seeds everywhere. In other words, leaving copies of the book sitting out or books you've read that influenced you. Or the other thing, when you're having dinner with your wife or whoever, and your offspring is there, tell stories about, oh, I read this book, whatever it might be, and out of it I got this amazing insight, and then I applied it to my business, and here's what happened. You're not telling your daughter here's what to do differently, but she is hearing an example of what to do differently. And it's hearing the example, and of course more persuasively is to see the example that actually makes the difference. Outside of that, Tim, what would you say? How would you back me up here or add to what I just said?
Yeah, that was actually amazing advice. So being the example, and then leaving books around, or, you know, children's books, kids' books that you can read to her that really build self-esteem. And then you're right, telling stories instead of telling someone directly what they should think or how they should feel. Tell them a story where they kind of come up with that idea on their own. And you can even make up stories, you know, about a shooting star or a unicorn or a teddy bear, or, you know, whatever she might be into, you know, about how she discovered that she was amazing and a beautiful soul, and she'll always be good enough no matter what. And, you know, and just these messages that we need to reinforce, because, you know, let's face it, when we grab a book that's called One Belief Away, it's because, you know, sometimes it's just because we want to get to the next level, but other times it's because we feel like we're missing something, right? And we're drawn to that. And those beliefs were picked up when we were kids and then reinforced as adults. So if we can shift that when they're little, it's huge. So.
And what's interesting is I misheard him when he said the age of his daughter. I thought he said she was 40. And apparently I didn't get that corrected in my mind until just now. And what's interesting is everything still applies. Whether the person is 40 years old or 4 years old, they watch you and they're looking for the example of how you're doing something. It might be equivalent to if I had run up against some sort of problem, much like you had said with the computer, Tim. And instead of telling a story about a belief that strengthens me, like there is always a way, and I went down the road of the average victim out there and said, God damn society and the technology and these people, these big companies are just ripping me off. They set this up to screw me and screw me personally. Well, that story is going to teach victimhood. That story is going to teach, oh my God, the world's out to get me and I'm not going to win at all. If my dad can't win, I can't win. So I think the demonstration is what's going to be the most powerful. And of course, telling stories.
Yeah. It's easy to catch ourselves maybe if we're upset and we're really angry and we're going off. But the other way is, you know, when you're feeling like a victim is where you're, you know, just feeling so, well, I guess you won't notice it then either, but when you're, I don't even know how to describe it. Maybe I'll just act it out. I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story. Okay. So when I was talking with Joe, the moment I knew for sure I wanted to ask Joe if he would help finish this book for me, because I took it so far, but I didn't know how to finish it because I hadn't figured out the lessons yet, and I know Joe did. But the moment that I figured it out, I asked Joe. I said, Joe, and are some people just luckier than others? Right? It was kind of like, I have a friend that wants to know, but of course I wanted to know. It was me, right? I wanted to know, are some people just luckier than others? And Joe shocked me twice. So the first thing he said was, well, I hesitate to answer that question because of the level of victimhood that's in it. And I went, oh, no way. I'm not still being a victim. I'm over that. Okay? So obviously I wasn't over that. And then the next thing he said was even more brilliant. He says, let's say there are lucky people out there. Why don't you just decide to be one of them? And I was like, because again, when you're telling your victimhood story, you won't always notice that you're telling it. You'll feel like you're just regurgitating the facts. You won't catch the fact that you're saying these opinions as though they are straight up truths, when they are just opinions, just ideas, just limiting beliefs. And then the idea that you could switch so quickly from feeling like you can't be a part of these lucky people to just deciding that you are now one of them and that you have the ability and the power to make that decision. And after that, for the next several months, I just decided I was one of these lucky people. I just told myself that things just work out for me. And I was able to put together the first Legend Summit with that idea that, of course, these people are going to want to do this because I'm just lucky and they're going to want to hang out with me and it's going to be amazing. Right. And so Joe got in my head with that idea and it took off. And now we have the Legend Summit. So there you go. That's
you know, what's interesting is from my perspective, I have no memory of that conversation. From
okay, I have it recorded.
Right, from my perspective, it was a non-event. But what you're pointing out, and thank you for being so open and transparent and acknowledging what you were going through and the interaction we both had. Because for me to be open and transparent right now too, I'm constantly working on myself. There's a stack of books right over here on the left. I have a stack on the right that I wrote, a stack on the left that other people wrote that I am reading because I am still reflecting on me. And much like Tim, what you just admitted that you were kind of shocked to hear about the victimhood and then shocked to think that maybe you could be lucky. I constantly run up against that because our operating beliefs don't feel like operating beliefs to us. They feel like this is just life.
Yeah,
this is life. I was on an interview one time and they said, "Can you define a mindset?" And I said, "Well, that's just the way you think the world is. When you describe the world and you say basically, well, it's kind of a good place, but you know, there's bumps in it," or most people would say it's not the greatest place, it's a very scary place. All they're saying is their description of their belief system. But until somebody, much like I've done with you and other people do with me, stops us and points out what we are saying, which is revealing what we are thinking, we will continue going down the same road. So I want to say this book, this has been written by Tim. I definitely had my part in it, and he was very kind to put me on the cover, and you know, our interview and the essence of it is in the back. But this is Tim's book. He wrote this book. And when I was rereading it, when it was before it went to publication, I was in awe. I was in awe because there were so many stories, there were so many insights, and there were so many techniques that helped the person reading the book to come to an awareness of what we were just talking about. They can use the book as a kind of a mirror. I'm thinking, for example, Tim, early on in the book, I was rereading it today just to kind of brush up on it for this moment here with you. And you were talking about the guy who wanted to quit smoking. Is she talking to me?
Hey, everybody, just a quick shout out. If you're not, I'll mute everybody real quick. All right, let me see here. Okay.
You did it?
All right, there we are.
All right. So in the book, you were talking about the guy who wanted to quit smoking, and you were working with him, and you got him to rethink a couple things, and which began to open his mind. But he still wasn't quite there until he came back to the next session with you, and he says, "I failed. I had a cigarette. Yeah. I had one." And you asked him, "What do you mean? Did you have one every 5 minutes? Did you have one before you came in? Did you have one, you know, in the morning and in the afternoon? Did you have one pack of cigarettes? What, you know," you broke it down. And he said, "No, I've had one cigarette since I saw you last."
Yeah. And he was a 4-pack a day guy.
Yeah. 4-pack a day guy who went down to, he had a cigarette in his mind. And this is the point. In his mind, he summed himself up as a failure because of the cigarette. You pointed out to him that one cigarette, when you used to smoke 4 packs a day, is actually an accomplishment. You deserve a medal for that, and just keep going in that direction. So all of this is to say, whether it is Tim, whether it's me, whether it's the guy in the book who wanted to quit smoking, we all have these beliefs that are operating, but we're not aware of them because we just think this is how life is. This is how it works. This is our conclusions about the operating of the human experience. And we seldom, until there's something like the book, that we get a chance to read, stop and reflect and go, well, maybe I can think differently. And that's where the breakthroughs come, and that's where empowerment comes, and that's where more of the joy of living, the gusto of life starts to come in. So, Tim, congratulations on the book. You did fantastic.
Wow. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. That's amazing. So, whew, that was so nice. I'm gonna start crying. That was great. So, anybody have any questions while we're on here? I mean, Joe and I are always talking. So if anybody has any questions, any thoughts, I know you probably have not had any time to even read this book yet, but you are in for a treat. This is not something that you're going to fly through. Those exercises are designed to take you through pretty powerful experiences. And so if you've had trouble with pretty much anything that human beings have trouble with, it's going to help you to start uncovering those unlimiting beliefs, or unlimiting. We're going to create unlimited beliefs in your mind, but any limiting beliefs that are stuck in your unconscious mind. The thing about limiting beliefs is that we don't know they're there. And so I call that first part of it the awakening, because you're awakening to this new awareness that you have this one, the ability to choose. You know, there's so many people I've worked with, and I've had the privilege of working with literally thousands and thousands and thousands of clients one-on-one. And I've heard many, many, many times, too many times, that I didn't know I was allowed to feel good. I didn't know that I had the choice. I didn't know this was ever a choice. And most of us don't. So it really takes you through that. And then the next experience is the releasing, and that's really getting rid of the anger, the resentment, the toxic energy inside of us that holds us back, that causes us to go back and review the bad things that have happened to us in our life and loop them around over and over and get re-injured and re-traumatized because we keep taking pieces of those events and, you know, playing them back and looping them in our mind. And it gets us so consumed with what's happened in the past that we have a hard time staying in the present and clarifying what we want for our future. So it's very powerful. And then after that, we go through the next stage of it, which is really about clearing up values conflicts. You know, I want this, but I want this too. You know, I want to make $1 million, but I don't want to do anything. I want to lose weight, but I want to eat everything in sight, you know, and those values conflicts that get in the way. So it just takes you through a series of powerful experiences that build one after another. And then once it takes you through that, then we move into where really Joe's work kicks in, where he talks about, you know, the 6 steps to manifesting anything you desire, and the billionaire's secret, you know, and his experiences with his billionaire buddy, and the profound insights that he learned from that friendship. And so it's a really extraordinary book, regardless of where you're at in life.
So, Tim, I have a question for you. We're waiting for people to think of what they want to ask, or what they want to say, or what they want to contribute. Mm-hmm. The question for you is, I'm curious to know how you got into hypnosis. You and I met, 20 years ago? Yeah. Is it that 15 to 20 years ago at the National Guild of Hypnotists?
Yeah.
Which, I used to go to all the time. I don't even know if they're still around. But how did you get into hypnosis? What drew you into the hypnotic trance world?
It was total accident. I was a sophomore in college. I was going to school for psychology, and they had guest speakers that came in, and one of them happened to be a hypnotist. And I volunteered, and because I was a class clown, you know, it was my way of trying to get attention and feel cared for, was just to make people laugh. And so I thought, I'll cluck like a chicken and be a fool. I don't care. And I went up there, and he was talking to me and told me that I would be safe and everything would be fine. And I closed my eyes, and then a couple of minutes into it, I feel this sense of peace wash over me. If you ever used hypnosis, it's like a massage for your mind and your body. I was so relaxed, and that knot that I walked around with all the time, that feeling of anxiety, it disappeared. And I'm like, what is happening? Because that knot, it never went away. It was always there. And for those few minutes, it felt like 5 minutes, you know, it was probably like 20, but it felt like 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, I felt a sense of ease. I could hear everybody laughing and giggling. I did not care. I was so peaceful. And then he brought me out of it. And I remember when he was counting from 1 up to 5, and I was going to open my eyes. He said, you're going to have so much confidence this week. You're going to feel really good about yourself. And all week, I felt like I walked taller and I felt more confident. I felt more peaceful, and I loved it. Now, eventually it wore off, and that anxiety started coming back because I was good at doing anxiety, even though I didn't know I was doing it to myself. I thought it was happening to me. And so, so I wanted to figure out how to get that back. So the school I went to is Indiana University, and they're very behavioralistic. They didn't really believe in things like hypnosis. And so I found a hypnosis school a couple hours away. And while I was going to school for psychology, I veered off and took this hypnosis class by Dr. Gazela Zuskowski. And there was 8 medical doctors and me.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a trip. And we were there for about 2 weeks in a row. And, you know, it blew my mind. I mean, she was opening my mind to all kinds of stuff. And she was having people come in, patients, and she would say, or clients, and she would say, you know, if you do this demonstration, I won't charge you. And so I watched people stop smoking and break phobias and, you know, repair the traumatic situations they went through in the past. Now, mind you, I'm going to school for psychology, and they're telling me that it might take a year to get rid of a phobia. Sometimes you never get rid of it. And I'm watching Dr. Z, she's getting rid of it in 20 minutes. And I'm like, wait a second. So I go back after I get my training, you know, and I'm asking the dean of the school all these questions, and he's telling me hypnosis doesn't work. And I'm like, well, have you had any training? And he's like, well, no. I said, well, I just finished my certification. I watched it work. I almost got kicked out of the department because I made him look, I didn't mean to, but he was just spewing off a lot of falsehoods, which I find a lot of people in a lot of psychology teachers do that, unfortunately. And they think they know everything. And now that I've been in the field 32 years, I don't think so. So, so that got me into it. And then I remember trying to figure out how to make money as a hypnotist. And I went to the guild convention, and I met you there. And I didn't know anything about you except all the biggest headliners hung around your table. So I'm like, well, he must be fancy, so I'm going to go hang out with him. And it was a miracle that, you know, I had saved your card from 20 years ago.
Wrong number, wrong address. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, maybe I should not put that up there, but
it's okay. It's all right.
But I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I still have Joe's number, and that's how we reconnected.
That is an amazing story. I'm so glad I asked that. I had no idea. And
Yeah.
What a remarkable education you had, especially going to traditional psychology at the university and 2-week crash course at hypnosis and seeing massive breakthrough results.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
It was shocking. And I had the attitude of the skeptic, right? So I'm like, prove it. You know, I want to see it. You know, I've heard all these things, and show me. You know, I had that show me attitude. And so when someone shows up like that, I'm like, okay, let me show you, because I was the same way. I totally get it. You know, we don't want to be disappointed, and we don't want to look like we're being taken advantage of. So a lot of people have their guards up. But I've been doing it now. I've run a hypnosis practice for 27 years, and
Wow.
It's changed. People used to call up and say, does this really work? And now people call up and they're like, somebody knows somebody that it worked for them. My uncle, my aunt, my friend, my teacher, my doctor, and they're calling up and they're already wanting to do it. You know, they've heard great things about it. So it's finally starting to become more mainstream, which is good.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I see somebody posted a question here. If
Oh,
we have
good.
time, I'll tell you my story about hypnosis, but I want to make sure we answer whoever posts things. And Cassie, do you see the chat questions, Tim?
I do. I can read
Okay.
one here. Do you see it? Or you want me to read it out loud?
Yeah, go ahead, read it, if you don't mind.
It says, so thank you, Cassie. It says, I'm a multiple cancer thriver. I have a lot to say to others going through similar experiences and want to write a book, but then I'm frozen with who's going to want to hear what you have to say. I'm just going to go back to the first thing you said. I have a lot to say to others who are going through similar experiences. That's who wants to hear what you have to say, Cassie. Okay, so the answer is in the question. I want to get past the self-limiting belief. I'm feeling petrified about pushing the send button right now. I'm glad you did, but notice the word you're using: frozen, petrified. You know, that's making me feel scared. So well, what do you think about that, Joe?
Well, first of all, I love that you gave those insights into the structure of the question itself, which is revealing where she's coming from, which is also suggesting to Cassie, you have a choice. You can look at this differently. Now, I also know when it comes to change, sometimes authority can override your beliefs. So in other words, if an authority figure speaks to you about your beliefs, and you already are convinced the authority is an authority, your beliefs can collapse right then and there. So I'm going to bank on that and pretend I'm the authority. I've written 80 some books. I have helped hundreds, if not 1,000 people become published authors. Tim and I, of course, are celebrating the release of the new book, One Belief Away, today, as it's going out there. And what I have learned is that people want what's in the book. They don't care who is the actual person writing it. Now, of course, when you're Stephen King and you've got a name and this, that, and the other, there's going to be exceptions, and they'll look at the book because of the author of it. But if this is your first book and you're coming out with it, think more about the people who are going to read it and less about yourself. The point being, if you're a cancer survivor, and I say if you're saying you're a cancer survivor, congratulations on that. That is a big deal. That is a big, I want to really just inject some swear words in here because I kind of want to shake you and realize you have done something that so many people, and so I'm getting chills, and so many people's families have not been able to do. People have died, people have lost people who have died. The tragedy, the sadness, the struggle, the desperation for hope, as well as a strategy to survive cancer, is beyond scope needed. And you're telling me you've survived cancer. So I'm kind of in your face saying you almost are obligated to write your book to help all the people who are suffering right now. So Tim's insight into your questions can help you melt your fear around this. And then I want to push a little bit harder and say, you're a cancer survivor, show us a way. Even if your book ends up being hope, hope can help people survive. So it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how many other books are out there on the subject. Actually, the more books that are out there on the subject means there's more of an audience for that particular subject. I've had people that want to write cookbooks and they'll say, well, I come out with another cookbook. There's already 4 million of them. And I'll say, is there going to be another cookbook next week? Damn right. And there'll be one more after that, and more after that, and more after that, because people want cookbooks. Well, we've not resolved the cancer issue. It's a big deal. I think I'm going to be in your face and look, you're obligated to write the book. I don't care if you're afraid. You're obligated to write the book. You've got to go and do it. Face your fears. It can be far easier than you ever imagined. Ask Tim. He managed to get this book done and faced whatever demons he wrestled with to get to the other side of it. I don't mean to be so blunt, but at the same time, my heart is aching for the people who are suffering, and you can help them. So please help them.
Cassie, when you go into the places you don't want to go, you will be richly rewarded. Our biggest breakthroughs are hidden in the places we don't want to go. When you said I was petrified to push the send button, and then you did it anyway, you got the most beautiful confirmation from one of the best authors on the planet. Boom. Come on. That's awesome. Okay. So I mean, I got chills listening to that conversation, and truly think of it this way, Cassie, if, you went through this, if you had someone that could tell you what you know now while you were going through it, it probably would have been more comforting. Maybe you would have felt more courageous. You would have had more hope in those dark times when you weren't sure. Well, you can be that voice for someone else who's going through it next. So I agree.
Well said.
Yeah, we have, when you have that when that is put into you, wherever it comes from, God, the universe, from your incredible unconscious mind, from your heart, wherever it came from, that seed has been planted inside of you. Now, you don't have to do anything with it, but you already know you want to, or you wouldn't have asked the question. And so now you have validation. And don't get caught up in what kind of book it's going to be or how it's going to look or all that stuff, because that will work out. And we got people for that. Just like Joe said, we got people for computer. You got Chris O'Byrne here and his team. They can help you fix all that. They can make it look amazing, right? You just got to get your message out, because that's the thing that's special, that no one else will have that unique experience that you had. And so, yeah, it's on now. It's a challenge.
It's public now.
It's public. I got to record it, Cassie.
So we were talking earlier that a couple ways to change people or influence people. One is by example, and another is with a story. So let me give you a story that is an example. Way back in the mid 1990s, I was growing in success as an internet marketer, as a business person. I was speaking in Houston, Texas. The internet was coming around. I was one of the first to go on the internet. I was considered an internet pioneer, internet copywriter. So a lot of the business world was exploding for me. But I secretly had a spiritual side that I rarely talked about. The spiritual side had been there ever since I was 16, which tied to hypnosis and mysticism, and a lot of things I was interested in as a teenager. And in the mid 1990s, some of my first books were coming out. And I wrote a little book on spiritual marketing, which is what the title was, Spiritual Marketing. A little book that was me kind of coming out of the closet. But I'm going to tell you, I was terrified. I was terrified. I was terrified because I thought, I'm being published by Nightingale Conant, the American Management Association, the American Marketing Association, very traditional conservative publishers. And here Joe is secretly doing spiritual marketing. And I kept thinking, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to ban me? Will I be blacklisted? Will I lose my reputation? Will I lose my money? Will I lose my credentials? All of this, as I'm just shoved aside because of this secret side of Joe. So I did not want to release that book. But every now and then, I would hand it to somebody. I would print it at Kinko's. Remember, Kinko's was a local print shop. And I go over there, and the little book was just a booklet at that time. And I would print it. And if I felt like I'm connected to somebody and they seemed open-minded, I would give that to them. And I slowly started hearing how it was profoundly influencing them. Then one day I was invited to be at an event that Bob Proctor was putting on called The Science of Getting Rich, based on the old Wallace Wattles material. And Bob invited me to be there as his guest. And I thought, well, I have to repay him in some way. So I gave him Spiritual Marketing, which, wasn't published. It was a collectible, and I thought he'd understand. Oh, he understood all right. He understood enough to know that it was a gem. He stood up on stage in front of 250 people in Denver and said, there's a new book by Joe Vitale called Spiritual Marketing. It's not published yet, but you're all going to want it. Well, they stampeded me. They wanted this book. And there was a publisher there who said, I'll publish the book. And I said, you don't even know what it looks like. You haven't read a page of it. He said, Bob likes it. The crowd wants it. I'll publish it. So I reluctantly released Spiritual Marketing, my heart beating, me terrified, still thinking of all the other repercussions that could come in. Spiritual Marketing becomes my first Amazon bestseller. Spiritual Marketing is written about by the New York Times because it was a print-on-demand book that came out of nowhere, and they were writing about success stories, which happened to be me. And a big publisher in New York, Jay Wiley, contacts me. They saw the New York Times article. They saw all the buzz about spiritual marketing. And they contacted me and said they wanted to publish the book. And they said, we don't want the title. We don't care for spiritual marketing. But if you come up with another title, we'll publish the book. We'll pay you. We'll give you rights, blah, 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 blah. So we renamed it The Attractor Factor. If you know anything about my history, The Attractor Factor was a turning point in my career. Not only is it my #1 bestseller out of all my self-help books, but The Attractor Factor was the book that got me invited to be in the movie The Secret. Now, if you don't know about The Secret, The Secret shot me into outer space. When we land on Mars, if there's any life there, they're going to go, hey, do you know Joe Vitale? He wrote that book, The Attractor Factor. He was in The Secret, because The Secret is just blown across the world. So stop and trace this back. The notoriety that came from the movie The Secret, my being in The Secret, the book, The Attractor Factor, going back to spiritual marketing, and right before spiritual marketing was my fear of releasing it. I have found that our greatest wealth and our greatest successes come from facing our fears. I have seen this over and over in other areas and can tell you other stories, but I only want to give you this one about the book because, and this is for everybody watching, but in particular, the woman who was a cancer survivor who wants to write the book. You have to write the book for all the people who need it, and because of the unknown side benefits that are going to come your way as a result of writing that book.
Boom. I would drop my mic, but I'm not using it because it doesn't fit in my USB ports. That's brilliant. That is brilliant. So lots of thank yous, lots of good encouragement, which is awesome. So fantastic. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments? Anything else you want to jump into? I'm only halfway joking when I say now's the best time to ask, because Joe and I aren't charging you by the hour. Everybody knows everything. All right, awesome. So Joe, just real quick, I hate to ask you one more question after
whatever,
that.
I enjoy them.
I'm curious how you did get into hypnosis.
Yeah, it's because of my deep curiosity about life that began even as a kid. I think as a kid, I was very unhappy, and I thought there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more than this, than the abusive father, which, you know, gosh, at the same time, I'm grateful that he gave me life. There was also a tough time growing up. And I remember that I turned to books for virtually everything, and I still do. Books are my best friends. Books hold the secrets of the universe. Books are full of wisdom, and I would always turn to books. And because I was looking for more, I would read in psychology. I'd read, this is 16 years old, reading psychology, philosophy, metaphysics, and at least thinking I understood what I was reading. And of course, throughout that kind of literature, you're going to find mentions of hypnosis. Well, as soon as you start reading about hypnosis, the next thing you start hearing about are the magic and miracles that can take place with a good hypnotist. And some of it is going to be Bengali kind of a thing and a little bit scary oriented, or you'll hear about the comedy hypnotists who are just making fun of people or having fun with people. But I was interested in, where are the limits of human potential? I don't think I would have said that when I was 16 years old, but that's secretly what I was looking for. It's like, there's got to be more than this. What's the way out of the limitations of human experience? What's the way to have more power, or to get better results, or to be happier or healthier? And hypnosis seemed to promise that. And so I remember getting the book Self-Hypnosis by Leslie Lecron, reading it and thinking, well, it seems pretty easy. And I had a friend at the time who was as open-minded as me, and Billy and I took turns hypnotizing each other in the basement of my home in Niles, Ohio. Oh. Nobody knew from the outside of that house what psychological, naive teenage experiments were going on. Nothing crazy, but in the same time, we were trying to hypnotize each other.
Yeah.
And then we even tried regression. And I got to tell you this point, because it's the story that proves that you should always go to Tim when you want to be hypnotized and not to the 16-year-old neighbor. Billy and I were hypnotizing each other and regressing each other, which is kind of a tricky thing to do, especially when you're already a kid.
Yeah.
And I regressed him. He was 16 years old. I regressed him until he was the age of 5. When he was the age of 5, he became very much like a 5-year-old. He no longer wanted to listen to me. He no longer wanted to take orders or commands from me. And when I said, how old are you? He said, 72, how old are you? And he was in that whole rebellious mode. And I did everything that they told me to do in the book, snap your fingers 1 to 5, blah, 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 you know, nothing worked. The next thing I know, I was looking in the yellow pages. And remember the yellow pages, the great big book for a hypnotist. And there were only 5 listed, and they were in Cleveland, Ohio, which might as well have been in Bangkok, Thailand, for a kid in Niles, Ohio. But I started calling them, and only one answered the phone. And when he was on the phone, I played as cool as I could be. He said, "Hey, I've been studying hypnosis, you know, and I had a question. If you happen to regress somebody and, you know, they didn't come back, how would you bring them back?" And he suddenly turned mad. He read right through me. And he says, "Are you kids playing with hypnosis?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. What do I do?" And anyway, he told me, he says, "There's nothing to worry about." He said he will come out of it on his own. He will either fall asleep and then wake up and all will be right, or in a few minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, it'll just wear off. And he says, "But by God, don't do this again." And so I was really reprimanded, and I thought, okay, you need to do what Tim did. Go to school, get training, and when you do practice it, do it with somebody who already knows what they're doing. So that's a long answer to your story, Tim, but I explored a lot of hypnosis. I today have one of the largest hypnosis libraries that I've ever known about, because hypnosis goes back to the 1800s. Yeah. I have references in there to the very early stuff. And of course, in the very early days, it was mesmerism, because Mesmer was allegedly hypnotizing people. But I'm still a fan of hypnosis today. I don't do it as you do it. I'm not doing it with other people. And my hero in hypnosis is Milton Erickson. Mm-hmm. Milton Erickson, I have studied him. I have collected him. His storytelling ability, speaking to the unconscious mind, is something I still do today, sometimes in my copywriting. Because I know if I can wedge the story into the unconscious, I can probably influence somebody, which again goes back to what you and I said earlier. Demonstration and story are how you influence people.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That was an awesome story. I love that so much, because I have had kids call me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I've had everything happen. And so, yeah, I've had kids call up and ask questions and all kinds of stuff. So,
well, that actually makes me feel better. I always thought, you know, that was almost 50 years ago. So
yeah,
I've almost, this is probably an example of one belief away right here, Tim. I pretty much thought I was an oddball. Because, you know, regressing your 16-year-old buddy when you're 16,
yeah,
doing hypnosis alone was going to be something most 16-year-olds don't have any clue about, no interest in.
Yeah.
But to dive into the more speculative regression kind of thing as a kid, wow. So because you just told me you get calls from kids, I feel better.
Yay, good. Yeah, you weren't an oddball. You were ahead of your time. That's all.
That's the reframing we all need. I wasn't an oddball. I was ahead of my time. Oh, geez. Somebody just sent these to me the other day because I'm going to be on another event and they wanted me to hold them, but I've been using them all the time. It's like,
oh, that's great.
This works so much better. Just trying to figure out the computer stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. So good. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, getting people to relax with the hypnosis is super easy. I mean, truly, you can just read a script out of a book and people get really relaxed and afterwards say, "That was amazing. You're amazing. How'd you do that?" So, but the deeper stuff you do got to be careful of. For a while, you know, I wanted great hypnotists to work for me and I couldn't find them. So I trained them myself. I opened up a hypnosis school and trained them and hired the best ones. And, but I remember in my training, there were times where people were going home and trying to do more than they knew how to do. And I had a client one time call up and she said, "Ever since I worked with your assistant, you know, I haven't been able to stop crying. It's been like 2 days." And I'm like, "Well, what happened?" And I realized there was just a little loop that wasn't closed. And I'm like, okay. And it took me 30 seconds to be able to make a little distinction in there. And she was all better. And she's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, we just needed a little extra piece of it." And then I had to go have a talk with that hypnotist. And I'm like, "Hey, I just got a call. Here's a teaching moment. Be careful that you don't do this or this. So
wow.
Yeah, it's important because it's not just relaxation. When you go back and start working with people's memories and their beliefs and stuff like that, you really do need to know what you're doing, because you can re-traumatize people and never mean to. So, it's like playing with a gun. If you're careful, you can use it in a constructive way, but if you don't know what you're doing, someone could get hurt. So
somebody asked, what's the point of regression? How does it help in healing? And this is going to the past to correct what you think was going on, to change your perspective of it. There's some of it we talk about in this book through some of the stories, but how would you answer that, Tim, since you do that more often than me?
Well, that book does take you through a very safe way of being able to go back, and it's not the experiences that we go through, it's the beliefs that come from them. So, Wayne Dyer, I think, said it best. He said that if you get bit by a rattlesnake, the snake bite hurts, but it's not the bite that paralyzes you. It's the venom that's left inside. And our goal is to get the venom out. But what we tend to do is protect the venom with our anger, our resentment, our self-pity, our self-righteousness. And so our goal is to get the venom out. So if you go back in the past and you remember some painful experience, you can change how you experience it and then update or upgrade the belief that came from it. So I'm not worthy of being loved becomes I am worthy of being loved. I'm not good enough becomes I am good enough. This is my stuff and because there's something wrong with me. It happened because it's my fault or something wrong with me. No, it happened because of the immaturity and the low emotional intelligence or the woundedness of the adults that raised you. It was their stuff, not yours, and you internalized it. And so being able to take our power back and say, no, this is an experience I had, but that's not who I am. That is very empowering. And when you upgrade those beliefs, it changes the behavior immediately. It updates how you talk to yourself. You don't have to, most therapy is about trying to get you to be more of a positive thinker, but that's like trying to cut the top off a weed. If you don't get to the root, it just keeps growing back. But when you get to the root, it doesn't grow back, right? And so the behavior changes, how you think changes, how you take care of yourself changes because you went and you updated a belief, which is why the title ended up becoming One Belief Away. So that's how it really works. And those experiences are in that book. So you'll be able to go back and find those experiences and shift them. And then if you need extra help with that, then, you reach out and we'll figure out how to take you through that with some feedback, because sometimes it's hard to do it on our own. So.
And one other question is, I guess, addressed to me, because she's asking, how does the new book dovetail with Jawaponopono? Jawaponopono was a completely other subject. I'm wearing one of my Jawaponopono shirts. It's a Hawaiian spiritual system based on love and forgiveness. I've written 3 books on it: Zero Limits, At Zero, and the new one is The Fifth Phrase. It dovetails into One Belief Away because the work of Ho'oponopono is to help you release, remove, and erase the beliefs. In Ho'oponopono, we usually call beliefs data. And what we refer to is, in the mind, there's a whole lot of data. In the culture of Hawaii and the Polynesian islands, where Ho'oponopono comes from, they believe that data came from the beginning of time. So you not only got it from birth on, but before birth, it was downloaded into your biological system, into your DNA. So it's kind of hardwired. And Ho'oponopono is designed to help clean up the data. So it's a perfect companion to One Belief Away, because this is all about limiting beliefs. This is all about freedom. This is all about empowerment. This is all about getting to the place, well, in this case, we say, for prosperity and inner peace. Ho'oponopono would say, I think, the very same thing. So whoever asked the question, they work together just fine.
Yeah, very good. One last question. I'm going to send this to you as well, Joe. I'm writing a book. Hey, Mike, how are you? I'm writing a book. As an author, how do you know when you're done writing the book? You have to stop, because you'll never be done with it. So you just have to stop.
Yeah, well, there's probably good advice in that. First of all, you want to say what you have to say and stop, which sounds kind of simplistic, but at the same time, if you really do have so much to say, this is going to go beyond 200 pages, then call the first book volume 1 and come out with the next one. I have a series of books called The Miracles Manual, and it's volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. They're in 3 books. If I put them all in one, it'd be 700 pages long, which these days, most people don't want those kind of books. I think it was Mark Victor Hansen who said people want the Mick book. They want the, the bite-size trimmer book. But Mike, I don't know you and I don't know your book, so it's hard to give you more of a definite answer. But when people buy the book, they're looking for a particular solution. In the case of what we're talking about in nonfiction, not entertainment so much, which would be in fiction. So they're looking for a solution. Say enough to give the solution. And if you do need more, consider some sort of follow-up book or follow-up course or follow-up program. The other thing that I do, and we did it with the book as well, is that we do the best we can. And then we allow some esteemed, trusted readers, a dozen or so people, to read the manuscript. And when they come back, they can say, oh, you need to enlarge this, you need to delete this chapter, it makes no sense. Or in this case, this book went through different title generations. And I don't mind saying that because Tim and I were ready to release the book with a previous title we had, which was a good title. But we were pushed by Randy Gage to think, well, maybe there's one even better. And son of a gun, if that gentle little loving push didn't cause us to brainstorm, and One Belief Away is so much better than all the titles that we had. I wish I had thought of this on my own. One Belief Away is a killer title. And I think Tim's going to create an empire based around it because it's so good. So put some thought, have some other people read the manuscripts. They'll give you some questions or some insight, and then you can fine tune your book.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Randy, and that feedback that you get, you got to look at it as feedback, not criticism. And so, because Randy was like, Tim, I think this is the, one of the top 5 worst titles I have ever heard. It's atrocious. And I'm like, God, Randy, geez. I called up Joe like a whining puppy. I'm like, Joe, Randy, it's horrible. So, but he was right. I mean, it was great feedback. And so, yeah, so I was very blessed that he shared it. So, because he didn't have to. Brian, you got a question for us? And then we're going to wrap up. We got time for maybe one more question.
Well, it wasn't really a question. It was more of a share of an experience that happened to me. And I don't even know if this is appropriate or not, but I noticed that the recent loss of a loved one, September 6th of last year, I was able to really, I got in the ring with myself and I went all 50 rounds, and obviously my opponent was equally matched, and I depressed myself so far down, and through the help of some friends, they told me what my value was to the person that had recently passed. And then it occurred to me, if I could depress myself so far down that I could actually use that same brain and lift myself up. The trouble that I find is that once I did that, I just cannot maintain a certain level in a forward motion, so to speak. And that's where I struggle with that. So that's all.
Yeah.
I'll take the first stab at that, Tim,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because of the pandemic, most of us are recluses. We're all told to stay at home, and most of our work and everything is tight at home. So you may not have as much interaction as you might have had in the past with other people. But what I've learned is that one of the great secrets to success is to surround your people who uplift you. It was even, going back thousands of years to Epictetus back in Stoicism, who said, be around people who uplift you and pull the best out of you. And I love that. That's thousands of years ago. It's still relevant today. And of course, Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich talked about creating a mastermind. My point here is, while you can do the inner work alone, I find that you get accelerated results, and it's far easier if you have at least one other person that believes in you and supports you as well. So it's kind of a cheerleader team. And even in a pandemic, you can create a Facebook group, you can find a group, you can be with people that are like-minded. Because what I hear in your comment is that you've pretty much been doing this alone. Again, you can do it alone. But the Lone Ranger approach, the John Wayne approach, that's not really the wisest approach for a successful life. Makes for a great TV series, not so much a life experience. So I would say gather some light around you. It's even interesting that when I look at your camera there, you're in the dark. You're in the dark. There's no light on you.
It's my whale oil reserves are low for my lamp. So
there you go.
Yeah, but my clientele base is recovery work. So I get a lot of people that, and so that's who a majority of my clientele is, and I'm trying to move towards prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And I've started that back in August, and I've gotten no farther than I have everything, all the pieces of the puzzle, but yet I'm not able to connect them correctly and move forward. And as far as interaction with the public, I found that I really enjoyed DoorDash. So I'm out, and it gives me a form of exercise and listening to some good music.
You're delivering food?
I do that, yeah, for part-time income.
Good for you.
And when the pandemic, when Indiana got shut down, the streets were barren, and I was out there, and I didn't realize why the person that ordered a double quarter pounder with cheese and a chocolate shake lived on the 4th floor in an apartment building. So that's who my clientele base is on that. So
nice.
This is interesting.
Well, I love that you're problem solving and you're adding value and you're looking for ways to be social, and that's good. But you did say that the two groups of people that you hang out with the most are people who are having a difficult time, and then people who are pretty much shut in. So that doesn't really mean that you have people around you that are lifting you up. In fact, you're the motivator probably in those situations. So again, you don't have anybody motivating you. The second part of it is, the people that I work with are high functioning, very intelligent, very successful people who are still struggling in some area of their life, whether it's their money, their relationships, their self-confidence. I mean, there's a lot of very successful people that look amazing on the outside, and when they're on the inside, they are a mess. And so no matter how much you might have it together or how much you might know, those limiting beliefs inside of us are our blind spots. And it's hard to see your own blind spots. It's near impossible to see your own blind spots. And so that's why it often requires either new strategies or someone outside of you to help lead the way and feedback what they're experiencing. And so you not being able to get where you want to be right now, it says nothing about you except that we need to improve the strategies, right? Because what I heard is if you can use the power of your mind to get yourself that low, you can use the power of your mind to get higher, right? And go the other direction. You just need some new resources and people in your life that can help get you there.
And that's why you're my new best friend, Tim.
Well, and use me as an example, because I could have wrote that book by myself, but I wanted it to be an exceptional book. And the only way it could be an exceptional book is if I reached out to the most exceptional guy that I know and asked for help. Thank God he said yes. And here we are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody, that is our time today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Joe and I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and sharing your stories. I mean, that's awesome. And so we really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you so much for ordering a copy of One Belief Away or several copies. We are on a mission to get these messages out into the world. We've been doing that for a long time, and now you're a part of that. So if you can share the message and let people know this is not selling books, you don't make a lot of money selling books unless you sell 80 books, right? It is a labor of love, right? It is about getting messages out into the world to the people who need it the most. And we need as much help with that as possible. So if you could share what you're learning, or share this with groups who are looking for a new book for the Book of the Month Club, you know, or for churches, or for, you know, kids that are struggling. I mean, this book is, you know, will really help even teenagers. You know, I've tried to write it in a way that's very simple and clear and easy to understand. And so it will help so many people to end needless suffering. I really believe it's the cure for anxiety and insecurity. So thank you so much for being a part of this. We are going to sign off now. We'll have the replay available. If you want to watch it again, I will. I'm gonna. It was enjoyable. And then be on the lookout for the resources that you get. So everybody that's on this call, make sure and send out the resource page so that you can access all the bonuses that that Joe and I put together for you. So, Joe, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Tim. You're the guy spearheading this. You're the leader for all of us. You included me. I am profoundly grateful. You've always been a great guy and a great friend. So I'm glad that you're doing great things in a much more worldwide way. And I'm getting to go along for the ride. And for everybody here, thanks for participating. Thanks for supporting the launch. Go read the book. Tell other people about the book. And of course, as we talked about earlier, live your dreams, and other people, by example, seeing your example, will live theirs. Godspeed to all of you. I love you.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.